1947, CORE originally started a project called Journey of Reconciliation. Then, 14 years later, a group of interracial college students decided to do the same in their own project called Freedom Rides. They were testing the Supreme Court's decision in the Boynton v. Virginia case that made it unconstitutional to segregate the interstate buses.
On May 4th, the first bus left from Washington, D.C. with 7 African Americans and 6 Caucasian freedom activists. They arrived in Anniston on May 14th, but before their departure, a mob of civilians surrounded the bus, prohibiting them from continuing their journey. Violence broke out, and the bus was pulled off the road and set on fire.
The second bus left Nashville, Tennessee shortly after and arrived in Birmingham, Alabama on May 20th. At the station, they were immediately met by another angry mob who brutally assaulted the riders with the motive to discourage them. Aya Nash, a respected student leader of the riders, made it her job to monitor the rest of the rides and brought the severity of their cause to international attention.
Both buses joined in Birmingham, Alabama and headed to Montgomery. On May 20th, the riders arrived unprotected and unsupervised, finding themselves a crowd of 100 men with the Ku Klux Klan waiting for them. All the riders were harmed by makeshift weapons, especially Jim Zeuert. In a nearby Baptist church, citizens of Alabama held a congregation in support of Freedom Rides with National Guard outside. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke there, commending their efforts.
Continuing from Montgomery, the Freedom Riders reached Jackson, Mississippi on May 24th. They faced no trouble on the way due to the heavily armed National Guard escort. This seemingly late response was President Kennedy's acknowledgement to the crisis the riders faced. And while riders are grateful for government support, they remained wary of the soldiers.
But upon their arrival in Jackson, the riders were arrested for disobeying the segregation signs and were driven off to Parchment State Prison. On June 4th, a group of riders from New Orleans arrived in Jackson and ended up getting arrested as well. Among these riders were Joe Champion and Stockley Carmichael, active students in the freedom movement.
President Kennedy made the nationwide call urging the freedom activists to stop the rides for their safety. With everything on the line, stopping is out of the question. Soon after, the number of riders increased from 13 members to nearly 400. November 1st, 1961, Congress released new legislation reinforcing desegregation laws of public transportation.